Thank you so much for talking to us, Paul. At this time, and this is across the world, the role of a boss and a supportive boss takes a new and a very different meaning. And I want to understand from you, Paul, how should leaders conduct themselves at a time like this?
Well, it's a great question, Shradha. And I would say, even if I look at my own journey as a leader, I've learned a lot, particularly in 2020 in the crisis. One thing that's become clear is leaders show their true stuff during times of crisis, not when times are good, right? And so what we've discovered is that a lot of leaders have stepped up during the crisis and some have not, and it's kind of been a dividing line. I think the leaders that have really stepped up have shown conviction to grab the wheel. When the ship is in choppy waters, that's a time for a leader to grab the wheel and to steer the ship through the waters. And I think it's also a time to be honest with people, transparent, that, yeah, we're in the middle of a storm. We don't know when it's going to end, but it will end one day. That's one thing we've learned from our experience, that crises all eventually come to it together. So I think that's one behavior that I've seen. The leaders that have really shined through this crisis are the leaders that have shown conviction, shown focus, have established a clear vision and mission and a North Star, and reassured the team, made them feel safe that we will get through this.
I want to, in fact, bring here one of the quotes, one of the things that you've said. You said, I would urge all leaders to start a conversation with your people, not about algorithms, metrics, productivity, or output, but start with, how are you? How are you doing?
Absolutely. So that's, if we talk about the muscles of leadership, because I really think leadership is sort of a series of muscles that we build. The one that has really become more and more important is compassion. It starts with empathy. Empathy is feeling how the other person's feeling, but compassion is actually doing something about it. And so you're not able to do something to help someone until you know how they're feeling. So it begins with that question. Yeah, we never start meetings with numbers, with spreadsheets. The numbers are an outcome of having the right people in the right seats with the right support, the right care, motivation, right? So absolutely, it's not about, and I think many of the old school leaders have struggled through this crisis, because we all grew up in a world where we started the conversation with the outcomes, right? And then we figured out why we are where we are, and then we planned the way forward. But in this new world, it's more about having your finger on the pulse on how people are feeling, so you can help them accelerate and shine and grow.
A survey in June this year by Randstad found that although 2/3 felt COVID-19 had negatively impacted their work, 3/4 thought their boss was supporting and was looking after their well-being. Tell us about this survey, and was it conducted across the different geographies that you are in?
Yeah, so we're in 38 countries as the world's largest HR services firm, and we conduct these kinds of surveys, and they've really given us insights into behaviors, both of leaders, but also of employees and organizations, what they desire as well moving forward. And it's interesting that, again, the organizations that are navigating through the crisis, the ones that are, let's say, thriving rather than just surviving, are the ones that have leaders that are focusing on people first. We've been talking a lot about wellness, and wellness is taking on a deeper meaning, not only physical fitness and health, but also mental health, emotional health.
Yeah.
And leaders that figured that out early on, I would say back in, for me, it was sort of March, April, when I came to realize that we are in for a marathon, and we better start really showing care for our people. And I think the leaders that clued in early are now finding themselves in a place where the organization is future-proofed, ready for what's ahead.
Yeah. I found something very interesting, that the survey says that India has the most satisfied workforce. What do you think are the reasons behind this? And this would be a very interesting result for everyone watching. Yes, please tell us.
It's a great question. I'm very fortunate, Shradha, because I've lived and worked across many countries. In fact, before India, I was in Japan. I've been in Japan for 25 years. So if you talk about extreme differences in so many ways, cultures and business and so on, behaviors. But I can certainly say that India is much more expressive. It's much more of an emotional culture, which I love, by the way, growing up in an Italian Canadian home. So, I like it, very similar to the Indian culture. But one thing I can say clearly is that the Indian leaders that I've been around, and we work across the four corners of India. I'm constantly connecting with CEOs and CXOs. when the crisis started, most of the leaders were talking about their people, that they were concerned with people. They defaulted to that. And that's really interesting. That tells you something about the spirit, I think, of the Indian leader and maybe India in general. So that was one. And we do know from that research that you just mentioned, the survey and the study we did, is that leaders that show care for people build a stronger sense of loyalty and trust leads to satisfaction, happiness, safety.
Yeah. Now let's come to your book. And I'm very excited about this book that you've written. It's about the 5 E's critical to leadership.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk about the 5, but tell us what got you to write this book, and tell us about this 5 E's.
Well, I've always been a passionate student of leadership, growing up in Canada, being Canadian, a Canadian guy. I'm an ice hockey player forever. I still play in India. By the way, I go to Ladakh every year and I coach ice hockey and volunteer up in Ladakh. And I learned a lot of lessons about leadership on the ice hockey rink. And so I've always kind of been, interested in leadership, whether as a player or as a coach, as a captain of a team. And then of course, in the business world, also as a volunteer. I was a volunteer as well as a chairman of a large MPO and so on. And I've always kind of wondered, what is it about those leaders that really change the world? And they've come before us over history. They're around us right now, again, in different arenas. And the more I studied and learned about it, I actually started to realize as I was leading myself that effective leadership, let's call it impactful, game-changing leadership, is universal. It's less about the differences. Actually, there's similarities. So there's timelessness and borderlessness of game-changing leadership. So I had this kind of hallelujah moment that I was at London Business School doing a course on transformational leadership, actually. And my coach said, hey, let's talk about leadership. And he asked me a really tough question. I would encourage you, Shradha, and any leaders that are watching to ask this question and try to answer this question yourself. What is exceptional leadership? Define it. What does it look like? And it's a tough question. It's actually big, right? And you default to all the usual answers. So anyway, I answered the question. I went on for about 20 minutes and he said, oh, wait. Paul, you got to write a book. I guess over the years, I had kind of formulated my ideas about this. And anyway, serendipity, a few more people said I should write a book. And then I read a quote by Richard Branson. It pushed me over the edge. It said, if you've had an interesting life, it's your duty to write a book and share it with the world. And I mean, we've all had interesting lives, right? So you're stuck. You have to write a book. So I wrote it, right here in Bangor. In fact, I wrote it in Bangor on Saturday mornings.
Wow, yeah. The description of your book on Amazon is compelling. It reads, from a young backpacker sleeping on a park bench in Japan to becoming a senior leader of one of the biggest corporate giants in the world, Paul Dupuis has built a career through game-changing leadership, crafted through his own real-life experiences as an athlete, volunteer, and CEO. You have to tell us about this sleeping on a park bench anecdote.
I guess it's a bit of a teaser, isn't it? I mean, and I remember that bench well. Let me just back up a little bit. So coming from Canada, growing up in Windsor, Ontario, right on the border across from Michigan, from Detroit. Through university, I paid my way through university. I worked as a welder at Chrysler. So almost 5 years welder. So I learned the meaning of hard work as well. But also I had a lot of time to think about my future. And I was kind of, like we are when you're in your young 20s, I was dreamy and I was really into the martial arts. And I thought, I got to go to Asia. So I settled on Japan and saved all my money, bought my ticket and landed in Osaka, Japan, September 1990, 30 years now.
Wow.
I planned to stay for 6 months. I only had $300 Canadian, which is about 17,000 rupees in my pocket. It was my life savings in my backpack. And I had nowhere to stay, pre-internet, you don't know where to go. I have my Lonely Planet guidebook. So I found a park bench and I slept on the park bench my first night in Asia. And the 6-month adventure has turned into almost 30 years now.
Wow. But your interest in the subject and your fascination with leadership, I'm told that it began in high school. Is it true?
Yeah. Well, I think it was sparked through growing up. I watched my dad. My dad was quite involved in the community from a volunteer perspective. He was a high school teacher, but also really involved in the community and the church and so on. So I saw him. He was kind of set the tone. And then in high school, I ran for student council president and somehow got elected. on a very silly campaign, I promised I would launch a radio station inside the school, just which ended up being just, announcements in between classes. But anyway, yeah, so that was my first taste of leadership. And I realized it's not as easy as I thought. Just having the title doesn't mean people will do what you want them to do.
Yeah, but with that announcement, I think you lived up to your own three E's, no, very early on: envision, enable, and excite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, you've talked about leadership similar to climbing a mountain,
Mhm.
and it's more than just an analogy. I want you to tell us uh, what because of course it's powerful and it's difficult and it brings a certain kind of a visual, but you've lived that. So tell us, what do you mean when you say this?
Well, first of all, there's so many wonderful proverbs and adages about, the 1,000-mile journey begins with one step and so on. Build a roadmap, set goals and milestones along, celebrate those. They're all so important. I absolutely believe that. But when you think about climbing a mountain, not that I'm an accomplished mountain climber, I have climbed Mount Fuji in Japan with
Wow.
boys. And, when you're standing at the bottom of Mount Fuji and you look up at the top, you think, wow, that's I'm going to get up there. How's it? It's intimidating. And it's like any big goal that we have in life. Huh? And I'm sure you've experienced it too, Shradha. I mean, but then when you get there, you realize, wow, I did it and I'm not done yet. So how did you get there? You get there through taking small steps, so there's an ice hockey saying that we always use. If you keep moving your legs, good things will happen. So you got to keep moving your legs, right? So I really believe in that in everything I do. Keep moving forward, keep moving your legs. And climbing a mountain is the same thing. You can't focus on the top because you get demotivated very quickly when you're tired or it seems so far away. So that to me is, I think the whole journey, I mean, as life in general is about that. It's about small steps and always moving forward.
Yeah, I'm getting, and so would everyone watching this today, listening to you would get very, very impressed because you've done so many things, and more importantly, what is coming out in your career, in your journey, I would say, not career, but journey, is someone who is so self-motivated and driven. And that brings me to the question, what got you into this role in India? Like, you could
Wow.
be anywhere in the world. What got you to be here in India?
Let me tell you, I sometimes pinch myself when I'm driving around, although COVID is a whole different situation, but we have offices across all of India. So every week I'm traveling somewhere in India before COVID, and I'm just fascinated by India. But yeah, how did I get here? Well, I never thought growing up in Canada that I would one day be CEO of Randstad in India. 60,000 people that we put to work every day.
Wow.
Huge organization with a lot of responsibility, which I love, by the way. But how did I get here? Well, that was never the top of the mountain I was aiming for. I've always kind of been a very mission focused guy, so I always focus on what's in front of me right now. And I believe that when you do that, and if you do your best and you achieve and you excel and you enjoy along the way, that the next thing naturally comes. Maybe it's the natural circle of life, I think. So focus on here and now. And a lot of leaders, especially younger leaders, ask me that question: how can I become a CEO one day? And stop focusing on being a CEO and focus on your mission today and be the best in the world you can be at what you're doing right now. And the next thing will come. And that's the way I've always approached things. So I don't think 5 years ahead or even 3 years ahead. Just kind of focus on the here and now and do my best.
Yeah. Uh, Paul, listening to you and your journey, I have to ask you this question. I've been interacting with a lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs in the last few months since the pandemic began. And then they're all figuring out. And what is amazing is the resilience that is coming out, because you have no option. You've been thrown and now you have to figure out, make things work. But at the same time, it has been a very lonely, tough, and in sometimes as a leader, demotivating, because you have to bear things. You don't have to show your emotions as much when you are in the rough tide. I want to ask from you and from your leadership, what are some of the things that helps you navigate tough times?
You're absolutely right, and it's not limited to entrepreneurs. And I actually see myself as an intrapreneur. I was an entrepreneur and had my own company in the past and so on, and so I've experienced both. But absolutely, the in times of crisis, particularly, it's lonely at the top, as the saying
Yeah.
goes. Because you need even the leader of the largest organization or corporation needs someone to bounce ideas off of, to vent. When you're frustrated.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all human. Come on. And I think that's one of the conclusions in 2020 is leaders are human too. And so for me, obviously, your family is important. I really believe also that you need that time to kind of completely remove yourself from the work environment. So now, I mean, you've got your wonderful little office you've set up there, I think, in your home, and I've got my mini one, and but then we end up from here, and then we open the door, and we're in this other world. It's like the movie The Matrix, eh? We're suddenly in this, and I think you really need to be able to flick that switch and be in that moment, just as when you come back into this seat, you're in this moment. So one thing that I've really kind of bought into is this idea of compartmentalization and being in the moment. We talk about mindfulness. My point is be in the moment, 100% now, and give the person in front of you the full attention that they deserve. And don't carry with you something that happened 5 minutes ago in the other place, right? So, and that's challenging. Secondly, you got to have ways to release the stress. And for me, it's I love to walk. I'm out the door at 5:30 every morning. I walk 10K.
Every day?
Every day. That's my thinking time. And it's not even something I think about anymore. It's a habit. I don't need an alarm clock. I'm out the door, and it's when I think, I clear my head, and I like to think about positive things like what if, two voices in your mind, the positive and the negative one. I would brush that one away, and I focus on the positive and just think what if, and think about how I can make an impact today. Any kind of physical activity makes me feel good. I like to hang out with my son. He likes Japanese anime. I watch Japanese anime with things that are completely moved from being a CEO. So I think you really need that. Final one is surround yourself with other leaders. I've got a lot of friends that are leaders in various capacities, right? And we hang out, we chat, we close the door and share our frustrations. And surround yourself with people who are in a similar situation.
But what you're saying is so powerful and deep. And somewhere it just reminds me of, the spirituality that we in India grew up with, the mindfulness, being in the moment. It's hard, but did you over the years practice this, or did it come naturally to you?
Oh, I think as I kind of climbed the mountain as a leader and took on more and more responsibility, I realized as more responsibility comes, it becomes even more important then to be able to do that. If I give you an example, so we have 60,000 people we put to work every day. When I wake up in the morning, I have a simple mantra: expect the best, prepare for the worst. And you can think about 60,000 people to work now in this current situation, and you can imagine the issues we deal with. They come and we deal with it. But then we also have the joy of, an employee who just had a baby, and I get to get on a Zoom and say congratulations, or into a 20-year-long tenure celebration with the whole family on the other side, and then have to go into, maybe a tough conversation to console someone. So I think, it's kind of come with the journey. I think if you're not able to do that as a leader, the burden is far too heavy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this amazing conversation. And I can't not ask you this question. There's this whole debate right now, world over, and I keep reading, and there are two views: that the world will go back to normalcy and people will go back to office, and then there's the whole conversation that things will change and you'll work from home. Tell us, what's your view?
Well, I'm not using the phrase new normal because I don't think anything about this is normal. I mean, in our lives, Shradha, when have you ever experienced a global pandemic where you were, come on, there's nothing normal. I don't want to call it normal. I'm going to call it the new world. It's a new world. It's a new world. And over history, if we study history, there have been so many turning points through history where new worlds emerge, right? From the Industrial Revolution to the go way back, the invention of the wheel. I mean, there's so many turning points in our history. And so this is one. This is clearly one. It will go down in history, will never be forgotten. And I like to take the stance that crisis brings opportunity. We know that. We've seen it time and time again. Any of us in our journey, our career, whether it was 9/11 or the global financial crisis, I was in Japan for the earthquakes and the tsunami. You know, every time there's a crisis of some sort, it brings an opportunity to grow, to change, and to be better. And so I think, yeah, we're moving into a new world. Hey, I think I've become a better leader. I know a lot of leaders I surround myself with feel they've become better leaders as a result of this crisis. We had no choice. Those new muscles. So what's the new world look like? It's going to be a new way of living. We've already seen it right now. It's going to be a hybrid way of working for sure. That's clear. And all the data shows that. You know, when the fear factor was really, really high, nobody wanted to go to the office. And that fear meter is slowly coming down, but still a large percentage, it depends on the country, it's a little bit different. But what we're hearing is anywhere between 25 to 35% of people, even when companies give the green light, okay, we're back, you know, vaccines are out and the world is safe, 25 to 35% of people are going to be very, very hesitant to go back to an office.
Yeah.
That's a new world. That's a new reality we're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Okay, my last question. You know, people, when they pick up, and I see the book behind, and I wish we had the book behind. I don't know why we haven't kept the book.
I'm gonna find a way to virtually, so I'll get one too.
The Rule of 5.
Yeah.
Now, what do you hope, what do you wish that when people pick up the book, they finish the book, what do you wish that they get out of the book?
So when and I'm a first-time author, right? And so when I sat down to write the book, I was told, hey, write a book. Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, write a book. That shouldn't be too hard, you know? So I sat on my balcony here in beautiful Bangalore with my laptop Saturday morning with my coffee, and I started typing, right? And I was typing away, and then backspace. And I tell you what, after 2 hours, I had a blank page. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a lot tougher than I thought writing it. So I did the next best thing. I went to Google. I said, how to write a book. How many sites, how many YouTube videos there are out there to teach you how to write a book. Still, I couldn't find anything. So I finally came up with this idea. Okay, I like talking about leadership. Why not talk about it, then write it? So I took my phone and I recorded about 100 voice memos of myself just talking about, telling stories and so on. Then I came up with a one-pager, and this is what kind of changed the game, to answer your question. The one-pager was a series of bullet points. 1, I want the book to be this. 2, I don't want the book to be this. And what I wanted the book to be was a narrative full of real stories from my life, but also from leaders around us across genres and geographies. I wanted it to be very easy to digest, so it's in my voice. So not theoretical. There's no diagrams or algorithms in there. I wanted it to have key takeaways that you could use the moment you close the book. Any leader could pick it up, and also accessible to leaders at any stage in their journey, whether they're young, aspiring, or seasoned veteran leaders. Anybody could pick it up, read a chapter, put it down. Yeah, I can use that. So there's one quote I would say that I think is really important, you know, in the book. So game-changing leadership, effective leadership is a mix of art and science, but that leader will never be remembered for the science.
Wow. So true and so powerful. I request everyone watching that let's get the Rule of 5, and this December, let's brush ourselves in the art and the 5 E's of becoming a great leader, a strong leader. Thank you, Paul. Great honor talking to you. Thank you. It's just motivated us, and I'm sure everyone watching would agree with me that this was very authentic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really thank you. All the best. Stay safe.